the trash. And the DNA profile obtained from the sheath identified a male as not being excluded as the biological father of the suspect profile. At least 99.9998% of the male population would be expected to be excluded from the possibility of being the suspect's biological father. Let's bring back in our guests, Lauren Vellucci, private investigator Mike King, host of the Profiling Evil podcast, and Joseph Scott Morgan, host of the Body Bags podcast, but also the man who on this show said, I bet they probably took something from the trash. And they did, Joseph.
Yeah, they did. A specific biological tieback. And boy, I tell you, those numbers are hard to defeat when it comes to DNA. You know, we can talk about a lot of other connectivity as far as forensics go, but when you begin to look at the overwhelming odds that it could be someone else, it's very hard to explain that away. And they're going to try to. But, you know, the fact that, you know, people have made a big deal out of the fact that there is no weapon at this point in time, at least that we know of. We don't know everything, okay? But the fact that the sheath was left behind, and we've heard all kinds of stories, haven't we? You know, we've heard Rambo knife, we've heard K-bar, essentially, hunting knife, military-style knife. Well, it turns out this is a military-style knife, and it's got a hilt on it, and it's got a hilt guard. And so, but what people might not understand is that with most of these hunting military-style knives, they come with a sheath. And that is, this is essentially a holster for a knife, if you will, to put it in very simple terms, that you can wear on your belt. Military does this. And so he left this behind. So this means he wasn't wearing it around his waist. He more than likely came in holding the knife that was held in the sheath, removed the knife from the sheath, and he had to click. You know, they talked about that spot, that button up there, which is where they recovered that DNA from. Now, I don't know what the source of that DNA was. I don't know if it was blood or if it was sweat. It's hard to tell at this point, but nonetheless, they tied that back, and then they tied it back to the trash. They have this common denominator that is his father, you know, and when you're thinking about all of this from the perspective of, you know, like genetic genealogy, where you're going back and you're trying to tie people back, this is the end of the road here. This means that you've created this profile. And again, these numbers are astronomical when you begin to talk about it. And it's going to be a tough hill to climb for the defense.
Mike King, as Lauren mentioned earlier this hour, do you agree? Do you think that the fact that the sheath is found in the upstairs bedroom, that Kaylee and Maddie were the first two victims and perhaps the real target here?
You know, that's a tough one to think about. It may be that he got disorganized as he went through this whole thing, and that's when he left it behind. And as I was listening to this description of the knife being found there, I had this flashback of sitting in San Quentin prison interviewing a kid named Brandon Wilson, who murdered a little 9-year-old boy down on the beach in Oceanside, California. And he talked about, Vinny, just that physical reaction of pulling the knife out of a sheath before he murdered this little boy. And he was so excited as he was doing that. And I've never forgotten that and the emotion that these offenders are going through as they're going through these crimes. So I think it's a mixed bag. It could have been that it was victim number one and the target. I think more importantly, though, it might have been a sign that he was starting to lose control as he went through this process. And that's, again, why I think he probably walked by this young woman as he left the house. He was so focused and had such tunnel vision.
You know, you think about all the things that were happening that night. Something else that happened, Lauren, was the fact that there was a DoorDash delivery at 4 a.m. And to me, I mean, this DoorDash delivery could have been in the middle of everything that was happening, but it wasn't. And I'm wondering if that tells us maybe he's staking the place out enough. Does he even know that a DoorDash delivery is coming?
Yeah, he absolutely knew. He waited and he saw it, and then he figured, okay, now is a safe time to enter. Maybe everyone is sleeping, going to bed. He absolutely knew. This guy was so narcissistic. I think the reason he was studying all of these things like criminology and all of that, was he wanted to beat the system. He wanted to be able to beat and make that perfect crime. And so for me, he thought he was very smart, and he is smart on a lot of levels, but not smart enough to realize that you can't commit the perfect crime. And I think that it just goes to show, like, I was concerned. I will admit, I was concerned about the investigation. But the police were just brilliant in everything that they did. They told the public basically that they had nothing. And it was all so that they could play to his narcissism and grandiosity, to think that he had gotten away with it. And so it was just brilliant. And I tip my hat to them. It's amazing.
It really is.
Yeah, it's just amazing.
Great work. Thank you all so much for joining us on this really significant night. Obviously, we'll be talking about this case a lot more in the future. Lauren Vellucci, Mike King, Profiling Evil podcast. Check it out. Body Bags podcast. Joseph Scott Morgan. Thank you all so much. We'll see you again really, really soon.
Thanks, Vinny.